Go.
Yes. Your Honor, before we proceed to the defense opening, it's my understanding that counsel is going to be showing some videos to the jury.
Okay.
These aren't evidence yet. I don't know what's going to be shown, and I think it's unusual procedure. I've often considered using exhibits in my opening statement, and I think it's generally accepted that they're not evidence yet. So we can't be showing them to the jury unless they're in evidence, and we don't have any of this in evidence yet. So I would object to that.
Well, he does need to tell you what he intends to show. Oh, I got to turn things on here. He does need to tell you what he proposes to show, and me too. But the rule does not preclude their use during opening statement at all. What's up, Mr.
Your Honor? The first slide is a jury instruction, part of self-defense. The second slide is a picture of Joseph Rosenbaum wearing the maroon shirt for identification purposes. The third is a video at the Ultimate Gas of Mr. Rosenbaum having to be restrained. The fourth is a still photograph of Mr. Rosenbaum walking down the street after arming himself with the chain. The fifth is a picture of Joseph Rosenbaum taken from the video at the Ultimate Gas Station of him and Mr. Zeminski. The sixth photograph is once again a picture taken by Nathan DeBrune of Joshua Zeminski and Joseph Rosenbaum starting a fire at the trailer. And in that one, Mr. Rosenbaum is wearing a blue mask. Number 7 is a picture from the Ultimate Gas Station taken from a video of somebody who's commonly been referred to in this as Yellow Pants Man. Kelly and Joshua Zeminski, showing Joshua Zeminski armed with the weapon that was the first weapon fired at car source number 3. Number 8 is a picture for identification of Richie McGinnis. Number 8 is a picture of how Richie McGinnis was dressed that evening so he can be identified in the videos. Number 9 is Gage Groskowitz and his backpack taken from a video that has been agreed to be introduced into evidence. Number 10 is a still photograph of Gage Groskowitz running down Sheridan Road towards my client, arming himself. You can see him pulling the gun out of his back waistband. Number 11 is a still photograph of Anthony Huber holding his skateboard. And then number 12 is a picture of Anthony Huber holding his skateboard so you can see the whole skateboard, but dressed the same way as it is in number 11. Number 13 is Anthony Huber holding Mr. Rosenbaum back at the confrontation at Ultimate. Number 14 is the photograph of Jump Kick Man, the non-complaining witness, kicking my client in the head. 15 are 2 close-up photographs taken from that of the shoes of Jump Kick Man. 16 is a photograph of 11:40 p.m. when Kyle-Rittenhouse is going out with Mr. Balch, and he's confronted by Yellow Pants Man and 3 other armed individuals that evening. And those photographs are blown up in 17, showing one individual with a noose, the other individual with rocks in each hand, and the other one a picture of the individual in the blue shirt armed. 18 is a video where Mr. Rittenhouse tried to return to the 59th Street car source and was stopped by law enforcement and the Bearcats. Number 19 is a still photograph taken from Mr. Rittenhouse at Ultimate as he's leaving with the fire extinguisher, his medical pack, and his gun, heading towards car source 3. 20 is the video, what's called the infrared video, with Kelly Zeminski, Joshua Zeminski, Rosenbaum, my client, and Richie McGinnis circled and identified. 1148 is a still photograph of Mr. Zeminski's arm in the air firing the first weapon, the first shot. 22 is that same photograph from the video, same video, a photo just a couple of seconds later with 2 circles, one identifying Mr. Rosenbaum in yellow and another one showing Mr. Zeminski with his arm raised firing. 23 is a video taken from, and I always forget this gentleman's name, Lucas Zanin, from 63rd Street, right west of Sheridan, which forms the south edge of car source, and that's what Kyle was running to. There's approximately 100 people there bashing all the car windows, in there with pipes, bats, things like that, jumping on the cars. And you hear the first shot, which is Zeminski's, and people kind of stop a little bit. And then you see Kyle, you hear the next shot, and all of those people start taking off from car source. 24 is the video where Kyle begins leaving car source 3 after the shooting. And on that video, you hear somebody who's been identified as Kelly Zeminski yelling, "Get him, kill him," things like that. He just shot him. 25 is Gage Groskwitz's video where he runs up to Kyle. It's about 7 seconds. Runs up to him as he's running down Sheridan. At that point, Mr. Groskowitz is unarmed. He asked Kyle what he did. Kyle said, "I'm going to turn myself into the police. I had to." Photograph 26 is for BG on the screen. Photograph of an unidentified individual in a white sleeveless, or what's commonly referred to as a wife beater shirt, hitting Mr. Rittenhouse in the head, knocking his cap off. And then right after that, you see the next photograph from that video of circled Mr. Huber picking up after a skateboard, which he had used to strike my client in the head. The next photograph is a still photograph of an individual running up to Kyle as he's on the ground. There are several individuals in that photograph. One of those individuals being Jump Kick Man approaching from Kyle's right. And the next photograph is him kicking Kyle in the head. 30 is the picture of the close-up of that and the shoes. 31 is a photograph of Mr. Huber striking Kyle Rittenhouse in the head with his skateboard, held by the trucks in his right hand.
Held what?
The trucks of the skateboard.
Do I look like I skateboard?
They're called trucks.
Okay, wheels. To me,
Okay.
they're wheels.
Fine. The wheels with his right hand while he's grabbing Kyle's gun, his bare hand, touching Kyle's gun with his left hand. The next photograph is depicting Jump Kick Man getting up from the ground, Mr. Huber with his hand once again on the gun going forward and still having his skateboard. 33 is a close-up of that photo. 34 is, you can see the strap on Mr. Rittenhouse's gun being pulled taut. Mr. Groskowitz running into the frame from the right of the frame. Next is Gage Groskowitz standing in front of Kyle Rittenhouse with his hands up. Kyle does not shoot. Next, Gage Groskowitz lunges forward with his right hand pointing directly, and that is when the shot is fired. And then there's a picture of Kyle Rittenhouse on the ground, individuals approaching him, one with a pipe, one with his hands up. He backs them off, does not fire. 11:51, him video trying to turn himself into the Kenosha Police Department and turned away. And the final is a photograph from the Antioch Police Department surveillance cam at 1:20 a.m. of Mr. Rittenhouse and his mother turning himself into the Antioch Police Department.
You know, I guess we don't need any witnesses. Well, we've got the whole trial there. I thought the opening statement was supposed to be a summary of the evidence, not the evidence itself. This is, I think we're up to 41 videos and photos that are going to be seemingly introduced through the testimony of Attorney Mark Richards. This is a highly unusual procedure, Judge. Both sides will have the opportunity to call witnesses to talk about these things. We will have an opportunity in closing arguments to characterize these things. But to give the jury what the defense considers, and I'm not conceding that these things are all the evidence or even that a lot of these things are relevant, but for the opening statement to essentially be the entire defense case and all the evidence, showing it to them is highly unusual. I took the approach in my opening statement, and I guess I was not pushing the envelope as far as I should have, but it's always been my approach that I will describe what I believe the evidence is going to be, but I'm not the witness. I'm not giving them the evidence. That's what the testimony is for. We've had a stipulation as to the authenticity of a lot of the things that counsel's talked about. That does not mean that they're admissible into evidence. It does not mean we're conceding relevance to those things, and I anticipate that there will be some arguments as to the relevance of a lot of these things. We've already had some arguments about some of these things. So, you know, you stressed to the jury that the opening statements would be brief. It took 5 minutes for him to list all of those things, let alone what it's going to take to actually show them and play them for the jury. So I think as a general policy, Your Honor, and I understand it's not necessarily the law, but witnesses should be presenting evidence, not the attorneys in their opening statement. So I object to this procedure. I think it's overly long. It's duplicative of what the evidence is going to be. There'll be an opportunity through witnesses to present all of that. I think counsel should be describing what he thinks the evidence is going to show. That's appropriate. But showing them all the evidence this way, why do we even need witnesses at this point? I'll get up and I'll play all the videos I want to play. They'll play all the videos they want to play, and then we'll just be done without any testimony. That's not the way this trial should work. So I don't think this is a proper procedure, Your Honor, and I do object to it.
Okay. Well, first of all, are you going to be able to authenticate each and every one of these?
All of these come from exhibits that have been agreed or stipulated to the authenticity.
And they're all going to be relevant?
They all are relevant. They've all been...
It sounded like what I've already heard about, by and large. You know, the standard is not what you did or what you can do or could do. The standard is what the law allows, and I can remember studying this 50 years ago, that this was an acceptable way, with judicial permission, to make an opening statement. We see it more in civil cases than in criminal. It's not customary in criminal cases, but I've seen it done by your office. And I have to say that you're right, this is a record number in terms of the numbers, but on the other hand, there's a large number of crimes being charged and separate acts that are being asserted with respect to both the acts that the state alleges were unlawful and the defendant's claim of self-defense. So given that they do appear all to be relevant and they've been agreed as authentic, then I don't see any reason that I should interfere with his right to make an opening statement. Mr. Binger makes a good point in reinforcing my comment that this is supposed to be brief and informative. So keep it.
I don't think I'll be any longer than him, Your Honor.
Bless you. All right. Anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. One of the motions in limine I filed, which was not objected to by the defense, is that there be no reference to any pending or prior criminal cases or convictions with regard to Joseph Rosenbaum. The parties are aware, the jury is not, that there was at the time of his death a pending criminal case between Joseph Rosenbaum and his girlfriend, Carrie Ann Swart, and there was a bond condition that prohibited Mr. Rosenbaum from having contact with her. The purpose of my motion in limine, which, as I said earlier, was not objected to by the defense, was we're not going to talk about that. Now, I made a reference in my opening statement to the fact that Mr. Rosenbaum saw Ms. Swart that night and basically was not allowed to stay with her, was not able to stay with her that night, so he left her residence. And I purposely worded it that way, Your Honor, because there are many reasons why someone may not be able to stay at someone's residence. It could be because of a bond condition. It could be for a myriad of other reasons. It's my understanding from an off-the-record discussion with counsel that he intends to go into this. He believes I've opened the door to it. I wanted a pretrial ruling from the court on this issue. We got one. And I'm now raising it because if it's going to be mentioned in the opening statement, I think this is the time to address this issue rather than in the middle of an opening statement. So I'm bringing it back up again. I do not believe that my statement opened the door to it. And frankly, my statement is not evidence. So I don't know that it can really open the door anyway. But by and large, I was very careful in the way I worded that. And I don't think it opened the door. I don't think, regardless, this is a relevant issue for this trial. Mr. Rosenbaum's conduct with regard to Ms. Swart has nothing to do with what was going on the street that night. So it is completely irrelevant, and I would ask that the court reaffirm its prior ruling on my motion in limine.
Your Honor, he can't have it both ways. He can't go and say he was at the house and he couldn't stay there and not. Why can't we tell the jury why? Because there was a no contact order. It's not appropriate. He thinks he didn't open the door, but he danced through the door. And he also talked about the hospital, got out of the hospital. He was in a mental hospital. And he's going to put her on the witness stand and we're not going to get to ask that? I mean, that's insane.
I was very careful about the word hospital, Your Honor. I believe it was actually St. Luke's in Racine, which is a medical facility. It is not a mental institution. This wasn't Mendota or Winnebago or something along those lines. And frankly, I'm not even 100% certain why he chose to check himself in. But again, whether or not Mr. Rosenbaum needed a new kidney or needed medications for mental illness or was going in to have his blood pressure checked has nothing to do with the events of this night. And frankly, it's just a backdoor way of attacking his character and suggesting to this jury that somehow because there's going to be an allegation from the defense that he had some sort of mental illness that had something to do with his behavior that night. I'd love to hear an expert on that, I guess, if they want to try and present that, and we can go down that line and we can talk about whether mental illness contributed to his behavior. What was his diagnosis? What medications were he on? We could open that door and go all the way through it, but that's a mini trial on an irrelevant issue, and if it's going to come in, there's a way to get it in through an other acts motion, which was never filed by the defense. And I certainly have not opened the door when I talk about the word hospital. This could be COVID treatment. It could be a kidney transfer. It could be anything. It does not open the door. And again, I was very careful in the way I worded that, Your Honor. You know, if I start talking about his medications or I start talking about, seeing a psychiatrist or something like that, that's different. Hospital is a very nebulous term that could mean a myriad of things.
Help me out here. I thought when I read the pretrial motions, and I know there were a series of them on which there was agreement, so I probably may not have the best recall of those because I didn't have to put too much thought into it. But I thought that the references or the statements which were attributed to Mr. Rosenbaum were, I just got out of jail today. You're telling me that there was also discussion about hospital? No? Or
there's no video or statements or audio of Mr. Rosenbaum talking about the hospital. The only relevance it has, Your Honor.
Well, wait a minute. So
sure.
Is there testimonial? Are we going to hear testimony that he made statements that he had just gotten out of jail that day?
There's going to be statements to that effect.
Okay. In fact, your statement on your opening statement was, and I will tell you this. I'm going to ask you to try to reconstruct it for me, or if necessary, I'll have the reporter read it. But I don't recall the exact statement. I do know that I thought at the time, I'm surprised he's going into this, because it may trigger a response. So what exactly did you tell the jury?
What I said, Your Honor, is that that Mr. Rosenbaum had gotten out of the hospital that day
Right.
and was carrying around a plastic bag,
Right.
which is the kind of bag that hospitals give you to carry around your personal
Okay.
belongings. The only relevance that it has to this case
Well, I
is
don't know.
that's
I
the
just
bag.
wanted to get
Sure.
the statement.
Yeah, and I
Now,
was doing that because
okay.
the bag comes in, and
Okay.
that's the only
I understand.
relevance.
Okay, now, and you also made a statement about his being with the person by whom he was allegedly bound not to have contact.
That's true.
And do we know the exact scope of that order?
I believe it was a straight, typical, no
Don't tell me
contact.
typical, no.
We can look it up, Your Honor.
Yeah, well,
It was
what
a
did you
bond
say about it?
condition.
What did you say about it?
What I said is that he had seen her after he got out of the hospital,
Right.
that he couldn't stay with her, and so then he left and essentially came downtown. And Ms. Swart will testify, and she will
Why did you say
talk.
that he couldn't stay with her?
I'm sorry?
Why did you say that he couldn't stay with her?
I said that because it explains why he left and came downtown. He's got a hospital bag, Your Honor. It's a little unusual, I think, for someone to be released from a hospital, have a bag of their personal belongings, go to their girlfriend's place, and then continue to walk around with it. That's a little unusual. We know what was really going on.
And by the way, how do we know that he had been there and had left? Is she going to testify?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and so she's going to talk about seeing him, she's going to talk about that bag, and she's going to say she saw what was in that bag. And this comes into play, Your Honor, because this is the bag that was thrown at the defendant. There's been some allegations out there that this is a Molotov cocktail, or it's got chemicals in it, or it's got something that could cause the defendant harm. It had toothpaste,
Okay.
mouthwash, a water bottle in it. That's the narrow relevance of this bag.
Well,
That's why the
I'm not
hospital.
concerned. The relevance is not something I want to talk about now. I want to talk about what you said and
Sure.
why he thinks it is worthy of response.
He's misrepresenting the facts of the case to the jury by saying hospital when it was a mental hospital. Mr. Binger knows full well
Why isn't that a hospital?
he had gotten out for a suicide attempt.
So,
And
It's a hospital.
And let the jury know what type of hospital it was. Why he was acting the way he was. He was not acting appropriately. That's part of the defense. And,
Boy,
and then he goes and says, can't stay there. Why can't he stay there? Because there's a court order that says he can't. He wasn't supposed to go there in the first part.
And if he was on trial for violating his bond, then we'd have that trial. But he hasn't been tried or convicted of that because he's deceased. But, Your Honor, and by the way, we have the bond condition here. It's no contact, including the residence, electronic or third party, with Carrie Ann Swart and the Park Ridge Inn, which she stays there, and they had been staying there together until that criminal case started. So, you know, if we want to charge Mr. Rosenbaum with violating his bond, what good would it do? He's deceased. But yes, that is true. But again, it doesn't make him a criminal on this evening. It doesn't make his behavior
Okay.
help explain any of that stuff.
I don't think, as far as your opening statement, you need to respond to his statement about the hospital. I'll have to separately decide at a later point as to whether he had been hospitalized and for what. I don't know if that's admissible or not. I suspect that it is not, but I'll keep an open mind. As far as his not being there or not supposed to be there, again, I'm not sure that I want to hear about that in your opening statement. But again, I'll hear you later as to why you think that would be relevant.
Just because he's talking about my client traveling here from out of bounds,
Right.
and he's trying to say, oh, he had a good excuse for not being at home. He couldn't stay there that night. Well, the jury should know why he couldn't stay there.
Well, I don't know. If he can't stay there, he can't stay there. She could have kicked him out because she didn't like his having a hospital bag. I don't know. I'm not sure it's necessarily relevant. He was where he, like the defendant, was not supposed to be, allegedly, and we'll let it play out. But don't talk about those two things in your opening statement. Anything else?
No.
Okay.
Hello?
Would you come down, please?
Yes.
Okay. right, good. Welcome back. What did I say? 10 minutes, right? Judicial time. When you're dealing with, what do we got? 5, 6 lawyers in the room? What do you expect? All right, let's go, Mr. Richards.
May it please the court, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning still for the next 10 minutes. This is my opportunity to tell you and show you what I believe the evidence will show. You've heard the state's opening statement, and now I will give mine. We have 2 very different outlooks on the events of August 25th of 2020. Kyle Rittenhouse was present in Kenosha, Wisconsin on the evening of August 24th. He stayed at his friend's residence, Dominic Black. He saw on the live streams and things like that the events of the 24th. He saw car source number 1, as I refer to it, the one that's on the east side of Sheridan Road, burn, all of the automobiles burned, destroyed. He saw the looting going on. He saw the other businesses burnt down. And the next morning, he went down to downtown Kenosha to look at the damage. He stopped and he helped clean up at the old Ruther High School. I think it's called something else now, but when I was around here, it was called Ruther, and before that, Bradford. And he saw that. He met one of the owners from CarSource, and they talked, and they decided that they would offer their services, him and Dominic Black and Nick Smith, to help protect the property of CarSource. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show, in spite of what the media and public statements and things like that have been, the evidence will show that Kyle Rittenhouse had strong ties to Kenosha. His father lived in Kenosha. His mother lived in Antioch, Illinois. Kyle worked here in Kenosha County at the Recplex in Pleasant Prairie as a lifeguard. He went downtown to clean up the graffiti. Him and Nick left there, and they decided to come back that evening and help CarSource Lot 2, which is at 59th and Sheridan, and initially CarSource 3 at 60th and Sheridan. And when they were doing that, they met other individuals who had come to town at the urging of websites and things like that, and then just a general, I would say, distaste for the destruction. And those guys from the West Bend area, Ryan Balch, Lukowski, Joanne Fiedler, agreed that they would all help protect the CarSource lots. And initially, they went to the lot at 59th early in the evening. And what will end up being, you will see the events of that night unfold in video and still photographs. But ultimately, what this case will come down to, it isn't a whodunit, when did it happen, or anything like that. It is, was Kyle Rittenhouse's actions privileged under the law of self-defense? That is, that the defendant believed that there was an actual or imminent unlawful interference with his person. The defendant believed that the amount of force which he used or threatened to use was necessary to prevent or terminate the interference, and that his belief was reasonable. You as jurors will end up looking at it from the standpoint of a 17-year-old under the circumstances as they existed on August 25th of 2020. And Mr. Binger makes a big thing out of Kyle Rittenhouse was the only person who shot somebody that evening. True. Mr. Rittenhouse was the only person who was chased by Joseph Rosenbaum that evening. This is Joseph Rosenbaum. And what's important in this photograph is, one, it will allow you to identify him throughout the course of trial. Notice the belt, the baggy, lengthy jeans, and there will be a fair amount of testimony, I'm sure, regarding the maroon shirt. He's obviously currently wearing it. Mr. Rosenbaum was at a location, and Mr. Rosenbaum had, along with other individuals, started a dumpster on fire. And when somebody put that dumpster that was very close to a gas station out, Mr. Rosenbaum became enraged. I'm going to go back. Is the sound on?
Shoot me, nigga! Shoot me, nigga!
That's just a brief snippet of that interaction. And he was upset, and he's yelling that he wants to be shot. And you'll see individuals in the full video, which you'll see in the course of trial, holding him back, trying to stop him from getting at an individual who is dressed with a baseball cap, an AR rifle, and short pants, who looks very much like Kyle Rittenhouse. Here's Mr. Rosenbaum during the evening. Him and his friend or associate, Joshua Zeminski, had just come from starting a trailer on fire. He arms himself with a chain and goes up and down Sheridan Road, carrying this rather heavy chain used to tie down equipment. Next is a still photograph taken from the Ultimate gas station where he was shouting, "Shoot me, nigger, shoot me, nigger," at a Black Lives rally. Who is that behind him? Joshua Zeminski. The evidence will show that Mr. Zeminski, also named as Alec Blaine, and Mr. Rosenbaum are together throughout the evening. And Joshua Zeminski plays a central role in this scenario on August 25th. One, creating chaos and havoc with Mr. Rosenbaum, and two, more importantly, when we finally get to car source number 3, Mr. Zeminski is the individual who fires the first shot that evening, behind Kyle Rittenhouse as he's being chased by Mr. Rosenbaum. Here's a picture with 2 circles. Mr. Rosenbaum and Mr. Zeminski starting the trailer on fire on Sheridan Road along with a dumpster. You see the photograph, the second one circled. The testimony will show that that is, in fact, Mr. Rosenbaum wearing a blue mask, not his shirt over his head, and carrying a bag, which I'm sure there will be much testimony about. Other individuals in this, once again, Mr. Zeminski. In the photograph taken at the Ultimate, this is a still from one of the videos you'll get to see, is Mr. Zeminski armed with the weapon that he ultimately fires at the car source 3. The individual with the red hair is Kelly Zeminski. She has a backpack, and there's a circle on her hand with a big, heavy flashlight. As you can see, there was no need that evening for a flashlight other than it being a weapon. Count 2 is an individual by the name of Richard McGinnis. He was a reporter covering the riots in Kenosha. He had covered the riots in Portland, Minneapolis, and he will tell you, when he's called to the witness stand by either the state or myself, that he was dressed like this that night. The black t-shirt with the white back, the helmet on his head, and he had interviewed Kyle Rittenhouse and talked to him, and Mr. Balch and Rittenhouse were going to go out and see if anybody needed medical attention that evening, and Richie McGinnis was going to follow along. He will testify that he goes out with them, and eventually they have an interaction with the individual who we refer to as Yellow Pants Man. This is Gage Groskwitz, the individual who is the victim, or excuse me, the complaining witness in count 5. I apologize. And in that photograph, you see that he's wearing a backpack and he has his cell phone in his hand, as he does throughout the evening, filming. Photograph 10, excuse me, the next photograph, is, the evidence will show Gage Groskwitz running down Sheridan Road, and you see his hand going into the back of his waistband, pulling out a firearm to arm himself. The evidence will show, through testimony of an individual by the name of Nathan DeBrune, that that yellow dot right up there is where Kyle-Rittenhouse is as they chase him down Sheridan Road. Mr. Groskwitz is not in any danger. Kyle-Rittenhouse has already told him that he's going to turn himself into the police, yet he arms and continues with the mob to attack. This is a picture of Anthony Huber, the individual who attacks my client as he's laying on the ground after being kicked in the head by Jump Kick Man with his skateboard. He hit him with the skateboard as he was running down Sheridan Road, and then as he's laying prone on the ground, he comes in for another hit on his head, and then grabs Kyle Rittenhouse's firearm to try and take it away from him. The next photograph is a picture to look at the whole skateboard, the size of that skateboard, the trucks of that skateboard. Ladies and gentlemen, I would love to be able to hold up that skateboard in front of you as evidence today, because then you could see it. You could see the weight and the heft of what a skateboard is. And what that skateboard would do is somebody takes it in their hand and swings down on somebody's shoulder, head, and neck, trying to separate the head from the body, as Mr. Huber did. But,
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the argument here, Your Honor. This is straying beyond a characterization of the evidence, and it's Mr. Richards' interpretation as an argument.
you'll see the photographs, you'll see the videos, and ultimately you'll get to make the decision of what Anthony Huber was trying to do. The skateboard doesn't exist because Ms. Giddings, his girlfriend, in spite of repeated requests by Detective Howard, refused to produce it. That's what the evidence will show. Mr. Huber, at the ultimate gas, holding back Mr. Rosenbaum, who is ultimately the individual who lit the fuse that night. Man I refer to as Jump Kick Man or the non-complaining witness. Kyle is laying on the ground after being knocked to the ground by an individual hitting him in the head with a rock, Anthony Huber hitting him with the skateboard, and Jump Kick Man comes in, kicks him square in the face with his black boot. Close-ups of that. And as he's kicking him in the face, Kyle fires 2 shots at that individual. He's not hit. He gets up and he runs away into the night, never to be seen again, never coming forward to identify himself as a victim, complaining witness or otherwise to law enforcement. We looked for him, the evidence will show. The state looked for him, the evidence will show. Those are the big players in this case. But ultimately, what you'll end up having to decide, looking at all the circumstances of that evening, are the events that occurred over really a brief 15-minute period, but more importantly, 3 minutes. The police spread or push people south to approximately 60th. That's something we can agree. There's no line set up to stop Kyle or anybody else going in a southerly direction down Sheridan Road. There's no statement that if you go in that direction, you can't come back if you have business in that direction. Kyle, an individual by the name of Ryan Balch, followed by Richard McGinnis, go down there, Sheridan Road. And at 11:40, they have a conversation yelling medic. And you'll see the videotape of this event. Kyle's got his medical bag, his gun, and he comes upon these three individuals. And the individual in the yellow pants accuses Kyle-Rittenhouse of pointing a laser sight from a gun at him. Kyle shrugs it off, does not want confrontation with these individuals, does not point his firearm at them, and he leaves. Why does he leave? Because he doesn't want trouble. These are the three individuals who were with Yellow Pants. One individual is carrying a noose. I don't know what that's for. The other individual, the testimony will be from Kyle Rittenhouse and Richie McGinnis, had rocks in his hands. And then the blue-shirted individual was carrying a 9mm firearm. Richard McGinnis will tell you about the marauding nature of these individuals. He was so intimidated by them after Kyle walked away that he had to give up 2 White Claws to him to settle him down and some cigarettes so that he would be able to leave them. Kyle, from there, realizes he's been separated from Mr. Balch. He goes over to the Ultimate gas station looking for Mr. Balch and is unable to find him. What happens next is he attempts to get back to Car Source at 59th and Sheridan Road. This is Kyle on the right coming into the frame.
I work that business. I am at that business.
They don't let him pass. He goes back to the Ultimate gas station, and a few minutes later, at approximately 11:45, he receives a phone call from Dominic Black. Dominic Black informs him, the evidence will show, that they're breaking windows and starting fires down at Car Source 3. Go and stop them. He asks an individual for a fire extinguisher and asks the individual to go down to Car Source 3 with him. The individual gives him the fire extinguisher but does not go with him. And Kyle heads down to Car Source 3. He doesn't know that Mr. Rosenbaum is down there. He's been asked to go down there by Nick Smith. He heads down Sheridan from 60th, walking to Sheridan and 63rd where the Car Source is. That's a picture of him from a video leaving the Car Source at 11:46 p.m. approximately. He has his firearm, and he has, as you can see in his other hand, a fire extinguisher to put out the fires that are being started down there. This is an aerial photograph that the state had referred to in its opening, and it's actually started to roll, and you'll see circles in here. There's Kelly Zeminski in the green lettering, and that's a thermal image, excuse me. I don't think I did start it. It starts very slowly. You can see people are labeled Richard McGinnis, Richie McGinnis, and they head down. You see Mr. Rosenbaum come around from hiding in the cars, beginning to chase my client. You'll see the flash of the firearm from Mr. Zabitsky, and you'll see the flashes of his first shots. I'm not responsible for cutting this video. I don't know how it got the way it did chopped up. That's the FBI up in the plane that took this video. But it's very telling because you'll see this 100 times. I'm not going to go through it again for you in opening. But you'll see it that the individuals are heading down Sheridan Road, and you'll see this Mr. McGinnis is now over here, go and hide right in this location. You'll see Kyle come into this area and pause where Mr. and Mrs. Zeminski are, and you'll see in this car is a fire that started. You'll see how it's bright. And they go, Kyle runs in this direction, trying to get away from Mr. Rosenbaum. Ladies and gentlemen, Kyle-Rittenhouse is under no obligation whatsoever to retreat from Mr. Rosenbaum. He does. He runs away from him because he doesn't want a confrontation. He doesn't want trouble, which makes no sense with what the state says about him hunting or chasing him down. He's trying to get away from the individual. You'll hear testimony, not just from Kyle Rittenhouse, but Balch, Mr. Balch, about Joseph Rosenbaum stating to Kyle and to Ryan Balch in each other's presence, if I get either of you two alone, I'm going to kill you. Flat out threats to murder. When Mr. Rosenbaum is shot in the car source lot 3, there's been a gunshot behind Kyle. He turns to address Mr. Rosenbaum with his firearm. Mr. Rosenbaum is not deterred. He continues to run. And you'll see that on numerous videos, closing the distance. Mr. Rosenbaum could have stopped at any time. Mr. Rosenbaum is wearing that maroon shirt on his face as a mask, covering up his identity, because he wants to steal my client's firearm and use it against him to carry out the threat he had made earlier. That isn't just the word of Kyle Rittenhouse made up after the fact. You'll hear the testimony of Richie McGinnis, who was close that evening. He was following behind them. You'll see him on the video. He'll testify to you in court. He did not feel endangered. He was doing his job. He will testify that Joseph Rosenbaum let out, as he put it, one of the scariest screams I ever heard, yelling, "Fuck you," and dove for Kyle Rittenhouse's gun. Kyle Rittenhouse fires. He fires 4 shots at Joseph Rosenbaum. The state wishes to slow everything down into a microsecond. Those 4 shots, the evidence will show, took 0.76 of a second, 76 hundredths of a second from first shot to last shot. Those shots will be those measurements will be put forth by Dr. John Black, who's a certified video examiner. He breaks every frame down. He knows how much each frame takes. He counts the frames, and he comes up with that time. Next photograph, 11:48. That's car source 3. You see an individual right here with his hand in the air. The evidence will show that's Mr. Zeminski. This is Mr. Rosenbaum in full stride running after Kyle Rittenhouse. This is a still from a video. And you'll see a lot of videos leading up to this. You'll see a video, I believe it's from Corey Elijah, where he's confronted by Mr. Rosenbaum. And he doesn't want a confrontation. And he goes, you'll hear it on the video. The video is not showing that confrontation, but you hear Kyle's voice, and he goes, friendly, friendly, friendly. He thinks, because he's giving medical attention and helping people out, that people don't have an animosity against him. He's wrong, but that's the belief in his head, and Mr. Rosenbaum chases after him. And I believe that the state will want to say, why did he go down there? He went down there because Nick Smith asked him to. Why didn't he keep running? One, you don't have to run. But two, I'll show you a video from 63rd looking back onto the car source lot, taken by an individual who will testify and his daughter. Next photograph, circled again, Zeminski with the arm up, Rosenbaum in full stride chasing, and an arrow pointing to Kyle. This is the video from 63rd and Sheridan Road.
Oh shit. They shooting. Oh shit. Oh my God. I am.
You'll see that whole video during the trial. The individuals were at car source, the rioters, destroying all of those vehicles. And as Kyle was running from Mr. Rosenbaum, he did not want to run into those rioters who were destroying all of that property that did not belong to them. You hear the first gunshot, the evidence will show Mr. Zeminski. You hear 4 shots in quick succession. The evidence will show that is Kyle firing at Mr. Rosenbaum as he's trying to take Kyle's weapon from him to use against him. You hear 3 more shots in quick succession. I don't think the government will have any dispute. I don't think the evidence will dispute. Those 3 shots are from another person who's in the car source lot firing for some reason. He was never identified, never arrested. This will show Kyle running back to the scene of the shooting. And it will show, I think the evidence will show, why Kyle-Rittenhouse didn't stay and render aid for Mr. Rosenbaum. Not that he's under any obligation to do that, but sometimes discretion is the better part of valor.
He shot him.
He fucking shot him! Get him there! He fucking shot him! He fucking shot him! He fucking shot him!
Take screenshots. That dude shot him. That nigga just shot that dude! Cranium that boy! He just shot him, man!
The individuals who are yelling, he just shot him, shoot him, and you can see one of them with a gun, Mr. and Mrs. Zeminski. He begins running down Sheridan Road. He's not taking his gun. He's not threatening anyone as he's running down Sheridan Road. He's running in a southerly, I always get my directions confused, a northerly direction from 63rd towards 60th. What is at 60th? The evidence will show that is where law enforcement is, and that's where somebody would run to be protected from a mob that wants to kill him. The evidence will show this next video taken from Gage Groskowitz. He runs up to Kyle. At this point, he is unarmed. Kyle does not point a firearm at him, does not do anything to dissuade him from approaching him. You'll hear on the video the exchange, and you'll see it.
Hey, what are you doing? You shot somebody? Who shot? Who shot? Hey, stop him!
You see him running with the gun at the ground away from Mr. Groskowitz. Mr. Groskowitz came up on Kyle, got very close. Did Kyle point a firearm at him? Did Kyle shoot at him? No. All he wanted to do was get to the police. But the mob is closing in, of which Mr. Groskwitz is a member. The first individual runs up behind Kyle and hits him in the head with his hand, or a hand with a rock in it. This yellow circle shows Kyle being knocked a bit askew, but more importantly, his hat being knocked off. He's run all this distance, his hat stayed on his head. The government doesn't want anyone to think that he's being attacked or hit. This still photograph shows that his hat is being knocked off. That's the first blow to Mr. Rittenhouse. He continues to run. The testimony will show that these individuals are running up on him. What's important in this photograph, the evidence will show, is on the left, the testimony will be that Mr. Huber is picking up his skateboard. Why is his skateboard on the ground? Because he has taken his skateboard and swung it at Kyle Rittenhouse's head for the first time, hitting him in the head. And you can see in the blue circle, Kyle Rittenhouse beginning to fall down. The two red marks are one, the individual who struck him first, and Jump Kick Man closing in. Kyle goes to the ground. This is a still photo from a video you'll see. What's important here, the evidence will show, is an individual. Kyle's on the ground within 2 feet. Kyle points the firearm at him, does not fire. The individual backs up. He's no longer a threat. Kyle does not discharge his firearm. The next picture. The unidentified complaining witness, Jump Kick Man, kicking Kyle in the face. Behind Jump Kick Man is Huber. Now he's picked up his skateboard. This is a photograph from a different angle, a different individual. And you see him running in Kyle's direction. There's the boot right before contact. Those are the boots that struck Kyle Rittenhouse in the face. Here is the photograph. Mr. Huber's bare hand on the skateboard, holding the trucks, bringing it into contact with the back of Kyle Rittenhouse's head. Jump Kick Man still has not even gotten completely on the ground. And where is Mr. Huber's hand? And it's important here, ladies and gentlemen, it's a bare hand grabbing his gun. The state will produce evidence, I believe, that there's no DNA on the gun. He must not have touched it. Ladies and gentlemen, there's video photographic evidence of him touching the gun. Next, the bare hand pulling the gun towards him. Jump Kick Man getting up to run away. You can see a close-up, the bare hand on the gun. Kyle Rittenhouse flat on his back in the most vulnerable position one can be in. There, the strap is pulled tight. Mr. Huber's trying to pull the gun away from Kyle Rittenhouse as he's laying flat on his back. Kyle's afraid he's going to be disarmed and shot with his own weapon, the evidence will show. He fires one shot, striking Mr. Huber. In this photograph, just entering from the right, the evidence will show is Gage Groskwitz. One hand, a phone, one hand, a firearm. Here's Gage Groskwitz with his hands up. Kyle Rittenhouse does not fire. Look at the distance between them. Huber's skateboard has not even hit the ground yet. That's how fast all these things occur. Mr. Groskwitz does not stay in that position or back up. He moves in on Kyle, getting closer, pointing the gun almost directly at his head. As the state said, he's like this, but look at where the gun is going. The gun is in the circle. It hasn't got directly to pointing at Kyle's head, but it's going there. Kyle fires once, hitting him. Another individual approaches after Gage Groskwitz has been shot, puts his hands up. Kyle-Rittenhouse does nothing. In that in event number 2, the whole event from first shot with Mr. Groskwitz, jump kick man coming in and getting the 2 shots, to the time Gage Groskwitz is shot in the arm is about 5 seconds. You'll have exact times of those shots, how fast it occurs. And after the shooting that evening, Mr. Groskwitz was interviewed. He told law enforcement his story of that evening. The one interesting detail he forgot to mention was that he was armed when he got shot. He told the police that he had lost his gun as he was running down Sheridan Avenue. He didn't know that there were people out there like him videotaping and photographing everything. He had a gun in his hand, and that's why he shot. His statement says that the reason he went into the fray was because he had to stop Anthony Huber from beating Kyle with the skateboard. At 11:51, Kyle has gotten up. There are individuals around who are in that area who've come at him. He's pointed his firearm, backed them off, and he continues in a northerly direction down Sheridan Road to 60th.
Hey, he just shot them! Hey, dude right here just shot them! Dude right here just shot all of them down there! What? That dude just shot them right there! That dude right here! Yeah! Someone injured straight ahead?
You see Kyle with his hands up approach the police car to turn himself in. The evidence will show that the police told him to get away from the car and go home. The police say that they pepper sprayed Kyle. Kyle didn't get hit with the pepper spray. He's not disputing that they might have shot pepper spray at him. That's why he backed up so quickly. He finally makes his way to car source 2 back at 59th, meets up with Dominic Black, the individual who sent him down to car source 3, tells him about what had happened. Dominic Black, I believe, will testify that he saw him. He was white as a ghost, sweating like a pig, and he was explaining what happened, saying he had to do it. It was self-defense. They talk about going home to Antioch. Dominic Black takes him home. They leave about 10 to 12, and at 1:20, Kyle Rittenhouse and his mother are walking into the Antioch Police Department, turning themselves in to the police, which is what he wanted to do here in Kenosha, but the way Kenosha was that night, with the police department surrounded by fence and things like that, he couldn't. He turned himself into law enforcement. He said from that day what he did. He's made no bones about that. He acted in self-defense, ladies and gentlemen. The evidence will show that his actions on August 25th of 2020 were reasonable under the circumstances as they existed that night, being attacked by Mr. Rosenbaum. The evidence will show, and the law is clear, he didn't endanger those other individuals. The government can refer to him all they wish as an active shooter. The only person he had shot was Joseph Rosenbaum, who had made threats to kill, had made numerous statements about ripping people's hearts out. He wasn't afraid to go back to jail. And Nathan DeBroom will testify to some of the actions of Mr. Rosenbaum that night. And he'll testify, and it was one of the more telling statements, I thought, in a statement. If there was trouble that night, Joseph Rosenbaum was there. And that's ultimately who visited himself upon Kyle-Rittenhouse. The evidence will show he thought, probably, that he could get that gun from Kyle-Rittenhouse. He was wrong. Kyle-Rittenhouse protected himself, protected his firearm so it couldn't be taken, used against him or other people from Mr. Rosenbaum who'd made threats to kill, and the other individuals who didn't see that shooting attacked him in the street like an animal. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what the evidence will show. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Richards. Let's break for lunch, folks. I'm going to take a vote now, and I don't want to influence by phrasing it one way or another. Are you comfortable with the temperature here? I'm going to ask how many think it's too warm, just right, or too cool. So, how many think it is too warm in here? How many think it is just right in here? 2, 4, 6, pretty much everybody. How many think it's cold in here? All right. Well, the majority is going to rule, unfortunately. But okay, thank you. We have this blower up here, which on occasion I used to, and it's gotten progressively worse over the years in terms of its enormity and intensity, but it controls the entire building, so I can't shut it. I can't ask them to shut it down because it has control over the air throughout the entire building, and it's tied into what they did to the ceiling here in 1965 or so. All right, with that, please don't talk about the case during the break. And is it unrealistic to set a tentative start time of about 1:15? But if you folks want more, that's okay. Just let me know if you want more time. And then we'll use this as a trial for the future. If you decide you wanted to go less time too, we could do that. But right now we'll aim for 1:15. And any questions? Okay, thank you very much.